So tell the world who you are and what you do.
Well, my name is Jack Fuqua. I am the owner-operator, Joyce and I, my wife, at Kentucky Lake Kennels. You can find us on Facebook at Kentucky Lake American Bulldogs, or then the best way to find me is just my personal Facebook page, which is Jack Fuqua. That's Fuqua, Jack Fuqua, and it's on that Facebook page that you'll find more. I do not like the business page, the Kentucky Lake American Bulldogs page, that much. It's too complicated for me to deal with, so I do most of it on my personal page, and you won't see what I've had for breakfast there. It's all about the Bulldogs, but most people go there to comment and send pictures of the pups and the dogs that they get from me. So there you'll see an honest look at what we do here.
So tell us the story. When did you get your start in dogs, and what led you to the American Bulldog?
My starting dogs, I guess, began. I've got a picture of me sitting in we're in West Tennessee, by the way. Kentucky Lake American Bulldogs always throws people. People think that we live in Kentucky, but we're on the southern end of Kentucky Lake, which is it is the largest impoundment east of the Mississippi River. Last time I looked. It's huge. It goes from Gilbertsville, Kentucky on down below south of us. But anyway, we're in a little town called Big Sandy, Tennessee. It's right on the Kentucky Lake. I've never not been without dogs. There's a picture of me in my diapers in my grandparents' yard before I was a year old, with a foxhound pup in the background of that picture, and so I've been around my grandparents, my granddaddy, my maternal granddaddy. He raised and hunted foxhounds, or hunted with foxhounds. And of course, for those that don't know, we don't. The way that they hunted, we did not kill the fox. These were Walker foxhounds, and they scent chased. All night. So that was the fun of sitting around the fire and listening to the dogs run. So I've been around dogs all my life, and then when I got into school, read such books as Outlaw Red, Big Red, and I don't know, some of the dog books that all boys back in the 60s would read. I forgot to mention I'm 67, so some of y'all young guys, you probably don't know what in the devil I'm talking about, but I go way back. So dogs, and then when I was adolescent, not quite a teenager, I raised my own beagle hounds, and we hunted a lot back in those days, especially rabbit hunted. And so I run dogs all my life of one kind or another. I got into the Bulldogs. That came to me, I can't remember if it was in 79 or 80. I bought an American Pit Bull Terrier, UKC registered, supposedly, and I'll get to that in a minute. But she wound up, it was my old Dice dog. That was the first Bulldog that I owned. And as she got she was just a phenomenal dog. She went when Joyce and I were married. She was in the wedding service, so she was a great dog. She was very dog aggressive and a great protector, but she was she was easy to manage as far as her protection. Never trained. We didn't know anything back in those days about. There were no places to go. Really, we live in the woods here. I've never lived in the city limits all my life, so. Doing things the modern way was not how I got involved with Bulldogs. It was old school. So at the time, also, Dice, my dog, I had a couple of litters off of her, and I'll send you a picture of. There'll be my wife and one of my buddies with a pair of those puppies. And back in those days, I was also breeding and raising game fowl, and was the West Tennessee director of the Tennessee Game Fowls Association. And it was at one of those meetings that I struck up a conversation with another game fowl enthusiast, and we live within 50 miles of each other. And anyway, we were talking about local stuff, and it got to talking about Bulldogs, and I was telling him about my Dice female dog, and he wanted to know where I got her, and I told him, and the owner of her sire or her dam, because the sire was not on site when I picked her up. So as we got to talking, he said, "Well, he said your dog is not truly a registered UKC dog. Do you know that?" And I said, "No. How do you know that?" And he said, "Because I've got the sire of your dog, and he's nothing but an old white bulldog." He said, "Those bulldogs have been in my family for years." This was before we knew anything about American Bulldogs. So the first bulldog actually that I was around was, just an old white bulldog, and she was absolutely phenomenal. She would catch. It was a great dog. After she died, my wife was working midnights, and this would have been in the we went through periods after Dice died. We went through periods, and I never kept any of the offspring. So they're all gone now. You're talking about 25, 30 years ago. But so in probably the mid 90s, my wife Joyce was working midnights, and she wanted another bulldog. She said, "You got to get me another Dice." So I looked around, and anyway, as luck would have it in a way, and unluck for him would have it, I wound up finding a local dog. He was one of those blue pit bulls, nothing, just a cheap dog. And I thought, well, I'll give him a try. And he was a good dog. We had him in the house, and he was a good protector, but he was definitely going to bite somebody. And unlucky for him and lucky for us, I guess, he got off he got out of the yard, got up in the highway up here, and was run over and killed. So the hunt for me went on to find some sort of a pit bull to get back, just to have for protection around the house. And I could not find anything. I try to I don't like to travel very much, so anything local I could find, it just wasn't. That's not something that I was used to. They were even Joe, the blue pit bull. I mean, I would have to pick him up and put him in the back of the truck. It was, to ride him around. The athleticism was just not there, like my old Dice dog. So anyway, I couldn't find a pit bull, and that led my search. And then I discovered actually the American Bulldog during that search. took pictures of my old dice dog down to Dixie Luckman, that runs Cedar Creek Kennels, and now she has bought out the John D. Johnson 100% dogs, but she's in Jackson, which is 50 miles away from us here, Jackson, Tennessee. Went and talked to her and looked over her stock and everything. I kept showing her this picture of my dice dog, and she said, Jack, she said, you don't want one of these dogs. You want to go see Alan Scott. And so she hooked me up with Alan, and I went down to Alan's place, and yep, that was what I was looking for. A rangy, fast, catch dogs. And at that time, he was still breeding, his old blood was there on the yard. So I got to handle a lot of his stuff at the time. And then he and I hit it off, and we're good friends to this day. He just had his birthday, I think, over the weekend, and I've failed to call him yet. But I've been on his shit list before, so that won't change. But anyway, I'll holler at him in a day or two and patch things up. I owe him $10 too, so I'll patch things up with him as we go. But, we hit it off, and I came home, I think. I wound up within a year getting 4 dogs off of his yard. And, 4. And then he and I we actually have done 2 breedings. One was successful, and I've got the progeny, or at least a female. My Leona dog is out of his Shamgar, and my Cayenne dog. So I have bred these dogs. There's nothing, depending on which line that I'm breeding now, which I probably need to explain that I'm a breeder and a feeder. And this line of dog, you don't have to really train them that much. These are your basic farm utility dog that they're very prey driven. And, at a young age, when I let them go here to their new homes, if they are on a farm or a ranch or around livestock, as long as they're trained early, what they can be prey driven about and what they can't, they do very well. But as catch dogs, they're as good as there are on the planet. So I sent a lot of them to the hog hunters in Texas. Matter of fact, this litter I've got on the ground now, I've got one going to Texas, and then that guy's also. I've got a 6-month-old pup here that I'll send down with that one to him. So that's what we do here. Basically, it's farm utility, companion, guardian type dogs. They're easy to train, super intelligent, and the main thing is they are very athletic. I mean, they are fast, they're strong. They have the longer style muzzle for the most part, and so they breathe well in hot weather. They're just, I'll never. These are the dogs that I will, I'll raise them till I die. So
that seems to be the pattern. Every American Bulldog guy I talk to says that they'll stick with that until the day they're gone.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see any reason to change. I do occasionally, as I've gotten older, and I'm getting a little bit weak in the hips, and I sort of wish for maybe a squirrel, a squirrel dog, a tree and squirrel dog, so some sort of bigger feist dog, a tree and type, but not as big as the curs, but something I can get up in the cab of the truck with me and tool around, jump out in the woods. We own a farm across on the other side of town. And, just something to mess with. But I haven't got into that, and I probably will not at this point. So, but yeah, these American Bulldogs are, they've got everything. And, of course, they've got everything in them. Well, you got 100% American Bulldogs, Jack? Well, I guess that's what they call them. But that's one of the things for me. Like my first one, I thought was a registered UKC dog, and she wasn't. She had the papers hung on her, so that's just the way that goes. The history behind these dogs is another thing altogether, and that's a fascinating story in and of itself. We can, at this point, as long as transportation remains such as it is now, to where we can travel from point A to point B and do our breedings and keep these lines coming, like we want them to come, as catch dogs or companion guardians, however you want to put it. I like to call them really farm utility dogs. But as long as they have that prey drive and the right size for some people I prefer the leggier types, though some of my dogs do come a little bit shorter with heavier bone. So it just depends. And they're equally athletic. The boys in Texas kind of want a leggy dog. Some of them do. They say that they get a little bit more leverage when it comes to getting the hog down. Maybe. Here in my part of West Tennessee, I don't hunt these dogs. I don't use them for catch work because we don't have hogs here. Mm-hmm. So all of my dogs that go to the hog hunters usually go to Texas. I've got them in Louisiana, Oklahoma, everywhere. And I should say I've got them in. They do well in the show ring also, for folks interested in that sort of thing. I have them scattered halfway around the world, you might say. I've got them scattered from Germany and probably most all of the states from Germany. And that dog was it's Kentucky Lake Elvis. And he was bred by Denise, or I sent him to Denise Schmuhl in Germany, and she has used him in her Proud Heroes Kennels program over there. And he has produced some decent litters over there. He was a brindle dog, which was what they needed. They needed some color in some of the stock over there to kind of. They were breeding too much white to white, and a lot of King Haven blood was going over that way, and they just kept breeding them until they were getting a lot of deaf dogs. So anyway, this Elvis dog of mine is still in her operation, though it's not on her yard. They can only have so many dogs at one time on a property in Germany. So he is there in Germany with one of her friends, along with 2 or 3 more of her dogs. But his progeny is in France, the Netherlands. I think one went to Norway. So, he's fairly well known over there. And then as I say, I've got them in most all of the states here and over to Hawaii. So that was getting a dog. I don't know if you've ever done the Hawaiian thing or not. With shipping the dog to Hawaii is a chore. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, I've heard they got to do
they're extremely strict, but probably one of the best dogs that I have Kaki Gunderson, lady friend of mine that lives in Hawaii, there on the north end of the Big Island, she got her as a pup, and of course I had to keep the pup here in quarantine till she was like, I think it was 6 months old. And I was able to train her with my style of training, and which is all old school. And got her. That was the easiest dog to train ever. I mean, she just took to it. Most of the training that I do, as far as obedience work, is with the old Kohler school obedience training method that's been around since the late 50s, early 60s. I guess it is a choke collar method, but it's real easy. I mean, the dogs take to it. It's the only thing I do as far as obedience. It's the negative style, I suppose you might say, of training, but I kind of really don't even understand why, there's no pain involved. They just know when they hear that chain clicking that, okay, I'm supposed to be doing something. Now, what do you want me to do? And then that's how the training goes. Old JoJo out here, this little 6-month-old pup, he's never had a collar on him, and he's already, he sit, stay. I've got to teach him down before my buddy from Texas comes up here to get him. But he sits, stays. I can drop the rope and walk off, and he's right there. So, these dogs are easy to train. Mm-hmm. That's the intelligence is there. In breeding, what I have, most everything now, any pups that you see from me are going to be line bred. That's the way right now I'm breeding. I always breed back toward Alan Scott's Heinz Texas Ranger dog. That's what my old gunner was a grandson on the top to him, and that dog, the old Ranger dog, was a super solid dog, and he caught on the a lot of my blood also goes back to the Alan had at the same time that Ranger was up and around. He had a dog named Sir Duke, and that's going to be in a lot of my stock also. So it's Alan told me when I got the first 4 dogs, he said, well, you got everything I've got now. So all of the stuff that he was breeding back in the 90s and the early 2000s is basically what I'm breeding now. Mm-hmm. That's I'm having to line breed them because I just don't care to get anything outside in. I do have my Geronimo dog. A friend of mine in North Carolina, Rebecca Baxter, and I, in the past, were kind of, we would swap dogs off, for breeding stock and all of that. Well, she decided to breed a dog off of Allen's yard, her Nancy dog, which, let's see, Nancy came out of Tammy Wynette. That dog, Tammy Wynette, was the mother of Crusher, by the way, Alan Scott's Crusher dog. And so the Nancy dog was bred to one of Don Matthews' black hybrid dogs, a dog named Black Jack, and produced Roxy. So Roxy is a half Don Matthews dog, Confederate Kennels Don Matthews, mm-hmm. And then the other half goes back to Alan's old stuff, which was Tammy Wynette and Sir Duke and Duke. So that is that is the bottom side of my Geronimo dog, and the top side, he's kind of mixed up, but there's a lot of good stuff in him on the top. I mean, he's got the Joshua blood in him, the Shunammite females, goes back to the cowboy dog, and then that's on the bottom side of the top part of his pedigree, and then the top, let's see. Well, let's see. I've got a brain fart going here. Let's see, on the top side of his head, well, I can't remember. Anyway, it's different, and he's had 2 or 3 litters and good dogs. One of the I'll send you a picture of a pair of pups working a cow. There's a horned heifer in the corral, that guy that got those two pups from me, and that's what he got them for, to catch cows. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, these dogs, any task that you might have in and around the farm or in the woods, they will do. They just need to know what you want them to do, and above all, what don't you want them to do. So you just have to, you know, you're a dog man, you know what I'm talking about. It's yes, sure. Yes, and no, no. Mm-hmm. So but really, that's sort of the long story of mm-hmm. Of how I got here. You know, with these dogs, as I kind of, I don't know if some of the, I do tend to think of the American Bulldog more as a type versus an absolute breed. But mm-hmm. As I said before, the more that we breed these dogs and keep them coming, and as long as transportation holds out to where we're able to find dogs, you know, then we're in good shape, and they will be a breed. AKC, I think, has already recognized them. I don't think they're showing them yet.
Yeah, I was talking to Bruce Huffmaster is heavily involved in that, and he's been working pretty closely with the AKC to try to make that a reality. But going back to what you were saying about the American Bulldog being more of a type instead of an actual breed, I've been having these thoughts lately myself, especially when I consider that, you know, especially, you know, when you say farm utility dog, a lot of these guys way back in the day, you know, before papers were even considered important, they had to have been breeding, you know, well, that's a great pit bull, and that's a great bulldog, and that's a great this, and they're just breeding them together. So I think they heavily influenced each other, which brings me to another question. To your knowledge, what's the story of the American Bulldog that you know of to this point? The history.
Well, the history to this point. Well, let's just get in the Wayback Machine, shall we? And we're not that. You know, time. You're young enough that you don't even understand that in my lifetime, there were people coming up and down the road in front of our house with horse and wagon, and I'm not talking about Amish people. I'm talking about, you know, just the regular country folks. So now this would have been in the early 60s, and of course, you know, we had all of our cars and trucks and things. We were running up and down the road then. But if you go back 20 or 30 years before that, let's just say the 30s and 40s, if you had what Alan and some of the older guys than me, he's not that much older, by the way, but But back then they just called them. There were several names for them. Alan likes to call them Old Southern Whites. Some people call them Old English. Some of them call them White English. But they were basically predominantly white bulldog. Okay. Now our Wayback Machine is set before our modern transportation. So if you were in the 1930s South, you didn't have vehicles, nor the time, nor the expense, when your white bulldog that was doing its farm chores and its job, you did not have an ability to go. I mean, you probably didn't even know where there was another one, within walking distance or driving distance in a horse and wagon. See, so what you had to do was find something close that would do something, and then you would line breed back to whichever side it was. If you had the female, then you went and looked for something. Pointer bird dogs are most likely in the American Bulldog genetics. Back when. You've got bird dog. You've got mastiff. Of course, the old saw about John Johnson was the Saint Bernard. There's always been that pick or story of boxers being used, to boost something up, supposedly, especially angulation in the rear end in some of these bulldogs. But so it wasn't necessarily pit bull terriers that were used, in the ancient of days before transportation. Now, you get up in the 60s and 70s, we were able to get a handle on all that because we were able to travel around and do our thing. And if you had to drive 200 miles to get to Alan Scott, say, or John D. Johnson, then you could do so. Or some of the old other guys. They certainly weren't the only ones going around the countryside, picking up what they considered to be a fine specimen of a bulldog. So, but basically, it was bulldog. And if you had to breed off, that's just what you had to do in the time before the transportation. But as transportation has grown with us, then so has the Bulldogs. That's been a wonderful part of this whole experience, and why I tend to keep my blood here on this yard as close to what I got from Alan as it can be. I mean, I've got two lines, my Peaches line, I've got my Calico line, which are those are the names of two of the original females I got from Alan, and both of those were bred to my gunner dog, and he was even somewhat kin to him, but not as, they were certainly, he sold those dogs to me as breeding. The first pair I got was a breeding pair. So, he considered them not close enough to do anything. But of course, as the years have gone by, I've just kept everything going back and forth, and I'm not getting any problems breeding that way. They just seem to get better, really, to tell you the truth. But size is all there, intelligence is there, but that's what people had to do, back in the old time. Certainly, the pit bull terriers have not hurt this blood at all. Mm-hmm. I mean, not at all. and where you have to use it, that, if I had to do it, which I will never have to, because there's always going to be what I consider an American Bulldog out there I can breed to. I know too many people now. But there is no doubt that this line that I have, you won't have to meander too far back in time. That there'll be some pit bull in there somewhere. It's not going to show up on the papers probably, but it's there. I mean, I mentioned the Tammy Wynette dog, who is the mother to Alan's Crusher dog, and she was bred to Wright's Rounder. Was it Rounder? Yeah. Anyway, and see, Rounder was one of those dogs that Alan considered an old Southern White. So Tammy Wynette and Rounder made Crusher, and see, Crusher was always, when you think of Alan Scott, well, he raises the standard dogs, and then the NKC show ring, you have a bully ring and a standard ring, and they don't show together. When they do best of show, they'll do that, but they keep them separate in the show ring. See, Alan Scott's Crusher dog, he was always shown, and that's how he became Supreme Grand Champion. He was always shown as a bully instead of a standard dog. A lot of people these days, and I'm guilty of this, I call my dogs Scott type dogs, because they, basically they came off his yard, and they're generally considered catch dogs, and they're super athletic, but yeah, so the point there about Crusher and Tammy Wynette, if you follow her on Pedigree Database, and there's this nondescript top and bottom to her called Troubles, and I forget what's the bottom side, Troubles and something, and then it goes blank, from that point on. So that's not many generations back. So, there were, Bulldogs of more or lesser degree Bulldog, I'm sure in her pedigree, and I use pedigree, that term loosely, once it gets to where you can't track it anymore. But most of the time you can track most of these American Bulldogs, and I'm more familiar with Allen's stock, but it'll go back to Dick the Bruiser as the foundation blood, and then his Dixie. What was her name? Dixie Queen or Dixie something. She had two names, Dixie something, as the foundation bitch dog. So that's kind of, I don't have a problem with it. Just common sense, and me being 67 years old and been, it was up in the 90s before I knew anything about an American Bulldog. I'd never heard of them. So I'd always dealt with the pit bulls, and then we did not here in my part of West Tennessee, other than the occasional old white bulldog. That's nobody raised them or were very interested in them. At that time, also, everybody in the country raised hogs, so you didn't want a catch dog really, on your place, mangling the herd. So they really, here where I am now, back in the, say, 50s and 60s, there weren't just a lot of them around, and there weren't that many. Pit bulls were not a thing either. And I had, and of course, that the American Bulldog, the first Allen and John D. Johnson, and when NKC got together, I mean, their name was the American Pit Bull. And then that got to be confusing with the American Pit Bull Terrier, so they should drop the pit. Is how that all transpired, but
it makes sense.
But yeah, I mean that's anything that I would know about it. I mean, you're going to have to people, looking for pure blood with an American Bulldog. I mean, I wish them luck, but they've got to come from somewhere. They just didn't, there wasn't an American Bulldog tree that sprang up out here, and we got to picking bulldogs off of that tree. So it's, they had to be made. Sort of like the plot, your plot hound dogs. I mean, they were made up out of all different kind of stuff. But right now, I mean, a plot coon or a plot hound, period. However, if you call them a coon hound or a bear dog or whatever, they're second to none on the planet too. So everything is a little bit mixed up, and I think that's why American Bulldog is a good name for them because we're mixed up.
Sure, that makes sense. What is the general weight, you would say, of your dogs?
My dogs are they're certainly within the breed standard as NKC shows it. The males are going to run, 85 to 95. I do not breed for anything bigger than that, though they do come that way. Geronimo, he's a 100-pound dog. Now, my old Peach's dog, Peach is a 90-pound female. She's too big, but she doesn't. Her the offspring are not that big. They're going. I mean, the males are going to run 90 pounds, but and in fact, one of her. There's Casey Clinton out in Texas he got the runt of the litter of my Ivanhoe by Peach's litter. He got a runt, and that dog wound up being 110 pounds. And is a whale of a catch dog, and he's in Comanche County in Texas. So, the heat is on down there, and I don't like to. As a matter of fact, that was one of the things that I told Alan when I first went down there to talk to him about obtaining some of his stock, was that I don't want them coming too big. And he said, well, the males are going to run 70 to 90 pounds, and I don't think offhand I can think of a male that ran as light as 70. If they 85, 95 pounds is plenty big to do anything. So the females are going to run, they're going to run 60, 80 pounds, 85, they follow right along with the UKC standard. I don't really weigh these dogs. I don't have a good way to weigh them. I weigh the puppies. I have to weigh myself and make sure I don't break the scales when I weigh myself, and then weigh the puppy and do the subtraction. I mean, that's what and so the scales in a grown dog is not going to work for me, in weighing them out. But yeah, they're all within the standard. I have bred my old gunner dog to Calico. They seem to throw males that were what I would consider over spec as far as weight. 100 pounds, 110 pounds. That's just too big for what I require these dogs to do and be, which is, number one, they got to be athletic. If they can't get in the back of my pickup truck, they can't stay on this yard. You know,
right.
I better not have to pick one up and put it in the back of my truck. Is what I'm getting at.
Absolutely.
They've got to be athletic. The biggest problem I have with these dogs is sometimes they can be over athletic. The calico dog, she would jump completely over the bed of the truck. From side to side, I'm talking about. That's the dog. Very athletic dogs is what I like, and that's what I breed. And that's why I'm glad I hooked up with Alan and got this line. So,
I tried to get an interview with both Don Matthews and Alan Scott, and neither one of them was interested.
Well, they have done so many interviews that I guess they figure that you should have, got on YouTube and got one of those interviews going or something. I don't know. So they are about, especially Alan. His wife Kayla has had some physical problems. They're not even staying, as far as I know. It's why I need to call him in the next day or two. The last time I talked to him a month or two ago, her dad was sick, and they had left the dogs and where they lived there in Fort Payne, or around Fort Payne, had gone to Gadsden, Alabama, where her daddy was. And gosh, he must have been an old guy, but whatever. Because Alan is older than me, and my dad's been dead for at least 5 years now. So, anyway, so he's not really breeding like he was. I mean, he's not, he's for lack of a better word, he's not looking for a way out, because he's still got plenty of dogs, but he's not breeding like he used to. And see, he and Don, he's got, I know last time I was at a dog show, he was showing two pups that Don had let him have. And he's breeding kind of heavy into that black blood right now, what Don calls his black hybrids. Mm-hmm. So, here again, to hear me talk, I'm old school, but they're older school than I am. So,
Now, I know they do really well in the South and in the Southern heat and everything, but how about their cold tolerance?
I have never heard anybody from the North. I've got them in New York. I've got them in Michigan, like Wyoming, Oregon, Washington State. They do just fine. And I don't bring dogs in the house, here. I don't have the room for that in the winter. Of course, we have moderate winters here in Tennessee, but, we have the 4 seasons, and we just keep the dog houses jammed full of straw, and the dogs don't complain, and they're healthy, and their appetites are good. So yeah, they do very well in all climates. I don't think they do any better the further south you go than they do the farther north you go. They're just solid dogs. I mean, I can't complain about these dogs. Mm-hmm. You just gonna have your hands full, some of them do not have a good off switch. So if you do have, as we call them around here, a kennel accident, or where 2 gets together, have a disagreement, then you're going to have to, break them off. So they just don't stop at your whim. So that's sort of the downside, I guess. If there's a downside to these dogs, is now this line that I have, especially I have more trouble with the females than the males. But the females can be very dog aggressive toward each other, not toward the males, but female to female. And I think it has more to do with jealousy. I have most of the problems with the females when something gets out of a kennel and gets out here on the yard, and I usually keep a female in the house, and when I go outside, I don't know one is out. And my house dog comes out with me, the other dog comes up to love on me, and then the fight is on. So it's more of a jealousy factor. When I have two dogs together, generally, as far as feeding, they're not really food aggressive, but they're super jealous, toward their, who they consider their man is. So, which is a plus, but it can be a negative if you get into having multiple dogs. It's just something that you have to deal with. But that being said, I've got people that have my line of dog. They come back later and get another pup. Sometimes, I always tell them to get the opposite sex, and sometimes they listen and sometimes they don't. And 90 times or 99 times out of 100, it works just fine. As long as they're together all the time, it usually works. But keep in mind, separate, like I have to, just dealing with a breeding program and not let them all commingle. Like what's his name, Caesar, whatchamacallit, with a big pen full of 100 different dogs, and no, that won't work here. You got to keep them separate. That is their downside, is they do tend to be dog aggressive. The hog hunters, however, that can't be with them. They don't won't tolerate these bulldogs that is going to be too dog aggressive. Of course, they don't turn these bulldogs loose until the bait, until the hogs bait up, the bay dogs, but they don't want these bulldogs getting in and fighting the bay dogs. But most of the time, that's not a problem, because I get these dogs are usually away from here soon enough that they don't, they've never been in a scrap, and there's no need to be in one. They've always been separated, but when you get them with other dogs, they do just fine, as long as the owner is dependable enough and knowledgeable enough to keep them trained up right. That's the whole
Sure.
The whole shebang is the training. So, but as far as instinctive training, you don't have to do much of anything with these dogs. They're gonna catch. That's just something you don't have to train them to do. They're gonna guard you. That's just something that they do. And they're gonna be a very loyal companion. That's just the way they are. So, for an all-around dog, they suit me right down to the ground.
Gotcha. And how many do you have now?
Let's see. I think I've got 10 breeders on the yard. Let's see. I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, I've got 10 dogs now. I say breeders. I won't breed Peaches anymore, and my old Maggie dog, I won't breed her anymore. So I've got 6 breedable females, and then I've got there are 3 males here, but that includes my old Geronimo dog, and I probably will not breed him anymore. I've got a son of his that came back to me from Michigan 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I'll give him a shot. Now he's got a shot of the Don Matthews black blood in him that comes from Geronimo, but it's back there, and he doesn't. Geronimo's never. He's had 2 or 3. Let's see, 3 litters, and none of them have been black. They all tend to. He's a white dog. He doesn't have any black on him either. So it's all hidden. It's there, and like going back to what we were talking about a while ago, the pit bull blood is in these dogs. It's just back in the pedigree far enough that you don't see any obvious sign of it, in what we're getting now, but certainly it's there.
Right. So what does the feeding regimen look like?
I feed probably 60%. I have been lucky enough, 60% raw, and then what I do is feed usually diamond, and I keep when I go to the feed store, I don't buy just one brand, one style of. Let's just keep it in diamond, for instance. I'll buy diamond rice and lamb, chicken. I'll mix it up, and then mix it for fear that, if there is a recall, with my luck, if I bought let's just say the lamb and rice, for instance, if I loaded up on lamb and rice, and then, I might not get the news that we're so far in the country here until a month later, that this is bad and is killing dogs. So I always mix mine as far as kibble goes. So I feed, something along the lines of 60% raw, and then 40% kibble. I'm lucky enough that we have deer processing places here sprinkled around in this county and the surrounding counties. So I work out with make deals with those guys, and during deer season, I'm able to go and get those type of scraps. And right now, I'm feeding a lot of beef and pork from a slaughterhouse here in this county. So I go once a week and pick up, enough to last at least a week, usually more. So I could feed, if I wanted to, I could feed 100%. But a lot of that type of scraps is a lot of the scrap is not just meat. It's going to have a lot of bone in it, and it's also a lot of fat. So I sort of have to sift through it and get what I can out of it. But that's really how I feed, and my feeding regimen, as far as I feed 1 time a day, and that's in the afternoon. So I feed all of their feed they're getting is at 1 time a day, and hopefully one of the reasons I do that is hopefully when I feed, then they'll settle in for the night and go to sleep. I say that hopefully because I'm still hoping it doesn't work, but whatever.
Yeah, gotcha.
I've gotten in the habit of doing that, and that's just when I feed. And then I do, especially in the summer, I fast them in the summer on Sunday. So I fast them, 1 day a week. Some of the other old timers, and I have done this, and I've not seen really any difference. But it's hard for me to fast a dog when I'm in here, eating. So that's another reason I always feed the dogs before I eat supper. So fasting the dogs once a day during hot weather to me is fairly important. Some of the old guys they'll fast. If they do it on Sunday, they'll fast them again on Wednesday, and I have done that. I don't really see any problem with that during the hot part. Talking about July and August, during when it's really hot, they don't eat that much. During that type of weather, or mine don't. So,
right. Is there any kind of supplements you use?
I don't, but I can't find anything to suit me really. All of the dogs are healthy and they're sound, and the females produce well. Back in the old days, in the 70s, we had there was a product called Dog Bloom that was probably was heavy in like brewer's yeast, and that was sort of the base of it. But you'd put a little scoop, like maybe 2 teaspoons full, and spread that over their feed. But they quit making that, so I don't really supplement. But at 67 years old, I don't take supplements either. So it's just not something that I really think about that much. I mean, I drink coffee in the morning and have my breakfast, and then have my supper and maybe a snack in between, and try to eat healthy. And, so, I don't do supplements myself, so I don't, the dogs are fine. So I don't, but, if you have something in your program, let me know. I mean, I might try it and see if it does make any difference.
The only thing I really did was, if I'm having like coat issues with the season change or anything, I'll use a lot of raw eggs, like with the shell and everything, but that's about it.
Oh, yeah. Now, I do that, yeah. But I consider that part of my raw feeding, regimen. And raw eggs definitely with the shells go in with the, when my lactating bitches, as I call them, I always do that. Yeah.
Is there anything else you do when the females are pregnant or whelping?
Nope. I just feed what I tend to. I feed them a little more generously when they're early in their pregnancy, and then I feed them a little bit more than, say, for 10 days to 2 weeks. If I get a good strong tie, and then after the tie, I will feed them a little more generously than normal, and then as they progress on, and I can see, after they get a month in, I would tend to feed them just maybe a tad less. I want them to be, I don't want them fat. That's the main thing. I don't want because they're going to get big and uncomfortable to begin with, and so I don't want them out of shape and fat. I do kind of work on that. Depending on the individual dog, that's harder to do than what I want it to be. Mm-hmm. But my Cayenne dog, for instance, I have to watch her even when she's not pregnant. She tends to blow up. There's 2 or 3 around here like that, but for the most part, they're pretty easy to manage, and I've not had any trouble. I have big, nice, strong litters, so that's how I do it. I might overfeed them just a smidge the first 2, maybe 3 weeks, and then from that point on, I cut them back just a little bit or feed them right at normal. But I don't overfeed them at all. Toward the end, and they're not going. The last several days they may not even eat at all. So I keep feed in front of them at all times. When they're with the puppies, feeding the puppies, there's feed 24/7, so they can get up and eat anytime. I don't feed them like I do the rest of the dogs on the yard. They got feed in front of them all the time when they have the puppies. Mm-hmm. But during the before they whelp, I do tend to keep them a little bit on the lean side, or as lean as I think they need to be. Mm-hmm. But that's an individual thing for each female. This female I have now, this is her first litter. She's got 5, and really nice litter, and she looks really good to have had a litter 2.5 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. She's gonna tighten up and get real close to the way she was before she became pregnant. So, but she's young, 2 years old. So this is her first litter, but. Yeah, I mean that's the way I do it.
Right. Okay. And so, tell me a little bit about your setup. You use chains, kennels.
Most all of the I keep my dogs, generally speaking, on what I call zip lines, okay. Cables and pulleys, and they are on a chain, but the chains are not on the ground, so to speak. They're not dragging around chains. Mm-hmm. That's how that I keep them. I would think my shortest run is something like 30 feet. So they've got 30 by 20 feet at least, and some of the chain lengths on from pulley to dog, I don't have them on 10 foot. I've got them on 15 or 20 feet. So they've got a lot of room to stretch out, and if they want to exercise, they can. On a day like today, where it's sunshiny and up near 70 degrees, they're sunbathing. So that's how I keep them, but I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I've got 10 or 12 of the 10 by. I make 10 by 20 kennel runs out of the chain link stuff, the basic stuff you get from Tractor Supply. They're kennels. Mm-hmm. If you let's see if I'm thinking right about this. If you buy 3 of the kennels, of the 10 by 10 kennels, you can actually wind up with 1, 2. Anyway, it escapes me now. But it takes 6 panels to make your 10 by 20, and then you stack up 4 more beside it, so your kennels are right there together. Mm-hmm. So once you get your first 6 up, Then you go buy a 10 by 10 kennel from Tractor Supply or whatever, and then you stack it on the side, down the long side of your 10 by 20, and you've got an instant another 10 by 20 pen.
Right.
So that's how my kennels are all 10 by 20s, except I do have my heat pen for the females in heat. I've got a heavy duty kennel that it's more like a 10 by 10 with a top on it. It's escape proof. And then I do have a couple of 10 by 10 kennels out here with tops on them also for run overs. I've got JoJo is in one of them. Little dog little dog, he's gonna be a big dog, but he's young. He's in one and has been all his life, except I'm fixing to turn him loose here in just a few minutes, by the way. All of my puppies, that's another thing. Once these dogs, my family and Alan Scott's dogs generally are slow to mature. Even as puppies, they seldom come out of the whelping house before 3 weeks old. They don't drink water. It's really got to be hot and miserable outside for them to come out of the whelping house and start searching around, for stuff. But once they do that, let's say at 4 weeks old or 3.5 to 4 weeks old, when they start coming out, then they are free to roam the yard out here every afternoon. And it's an odd thing. Going back to JoJo, he's been here 6 months. He's been let out every single afternoon all his life, and has never, other than just going up in and around the edge of the woods here. We live right in the woods, but he doesn't go away. He doesn't run off, and that's sort of normal for this whole family of dogs. They are. They love to be right here. They don't go messing around in the neighbor's yard. One of our neighbors over here has horses. That's not a big deal to them as puppies. As puppies. So they just hang out right here in the yard. Back when I first started, I did have a little bit trouble turning a litter loose, and they would try to get out in the woods and get away from me sometimes. But here in the last several years, every litter I've had, they just stay right here in the yard and work and do around and be puppies and play and fight and carry on, just like healthy pups will do. But yeah, my brood pen, I've got 2 of those. The one I like to use the most is, and I need to work on it. It's getting a little ramshackle. But I've got a big dog house that's on the outside, actually, of the pen proper, so that it doesn't take up room. But that's a 10 by 20 pen, covered for the most part. And yeah, they stay comfy and cozy, and got a fan blowing on them in the summer and a heat lamp in the winter, and never had any problems.
Nice. Really nice. The last question I had was, what advice would you give somebody who wants to get into the American Bulldog?
Just what I tell everybody is, number one, everybody thinks they want one. And I have had people call me from time to time. They didn't know that the dog was going to eat, the TV remote or their telephone or their shoes and their flip-flops and things like that. That goes with any dog. These dogs can be, I tell everybody, you're just going to have to be firm with them. In the American Bulldog world, we have a lot of our lady friends. Sometimes I always know when somebody's going to have trouble with these dogs when they come to get them as a puppy, and especially if the lady of the house picks the dog up and puts it in her arms with its belly up, and tickling at it as if it were, and cuckooing it like it's a little baby. And that's just that's a woman thing that they can't help themselves from doing that.
Right.
But I always know, okay, that one will have trouble if they're going to keep it in the house, and because they tend not to be firm enough. With these dogs. These dogs, that's another downside to them, I guess you might say. They're hard-headed. So it actually works better if the people who want to obtain an American Bulldog, really of any of the stock that I know of, you got to be more hard-headed than they are. So Joyce, one time we were down visiting with Alan, and she said, "Well, that dog, it just does this and that." And Alan told her, he said, "Well, Joyce, you're going to have to get you a paddle." And Joyce said, "You mean you whip them with a paddle?" He said, "Well, yeah." He said, "That's what you did with your kids," And so, but yeah, that's. That would be my advice, is just to make sure that you have time to deal with a dog that is going to be high energy, and you'll have to devote an amount of time, when you get off of work and get home to give them the exercise and the training that they need just to keep them sharp, That's just like anything else. It's like people, if you stop reading, you get dumber. So, and the same way with the dogs. You have to give them an amount of training, whether it's, done by a professional or yourself. And like I say, I've always done all the training here myself. I wouldn't train a dog for somebody other than if they ask me to, I will, because I still do things old school. You would laugh at my book. I've got the Kohler method of guard dog training that I still use the section on obedience training in it. And he was an AKC guy out on the West Coast who did all of the training for the Walt Disney films back when I was a little kid. Big Red. He trained the two dogs in the original Swiss Family Robinson. I think they were they Great Danes or Mastiffs? I can't remember.
I can't remember off the top of my head. I've seen clips from it, but I can't quite remember.
Well, he trained those dogs. He trained the original. That big English shepherd. What was that? Anyway, he's very old school, and his guard dog training methods you'd laugh at are very old school. But we've progressed on, and he's gone on to his reward years ago. So, but his if it works, don't fix it, as far as I'm concerned. And his obedience training methods, they just work. Wow. And I don't have to buy a special pouch to put on my hip with little treaty treats in it to, the dogs are happily going about, what I ask them to do. They do it, and are happy about doing it. I mean, there's no, I don't have to do the more positive style stuff, although that has its place too. I think, is that the way you do it?
When I train a dog, and I'm still learning training, honestly, but if, for example, if it's somebody else's dog, because I get calls all the time from, certain people asking what to do, and my first question to them is usually, what motivates the dog. So if it's, sometimes they are food motivated, and if they are, then I'd use treats. But most of the bull breeds I noticed are motivated by activity and wanting to please the owner.
Absolutely.
So like for example, if I let them know there's a possibility of taking a ride in the truck, then they'll do just about anything to get that ride in the truck.
Yeah.
I'll have them do 4 or 5 commands before I tell them load up. But at this point, I only have 2 dogs myself, and my band dog pup and his mother. And so right now I'm more focused on, actually I'm thinking of finding a spot for her so I could focus on him more, because I've waited so long for him. But I really I don't know, I guess my methods of training are mixed. It's like what Bruce Lee always said, you take what works and you get rid of what doesn't, and make it uniquely your own. So there's been methods from, you mentioned Kohler. I have PDF versions of those books, protection dog books and scent workbooks and all these different things. And I also will take a method or two from Cesar Millan.
Yeah.
With the exception of what you said, like I won't have 50 dogs all in one group playing and interacting. That's just a recipe for disaster.
Yes, it is here.
Yeah. No, I mean, it could.
Like I was saying, he takes something that looks like what we would call a fish stringer, and run running in through the loop of the, and use that as his instead of a choke collar, which is the same thing. But that's what I've done with the little JoJo out here. I just happen to have a rope there, so when I started working with him, so I thought, well, I don't want to go in the house and mess with the choke collar. I'll see if this will work, and it has. So yeah, Cesar knows what he's doing.
Yeah, it's just it's funny because some of the methods I picked up from him. Some of the methods I've picked up from the street. For example, there was this dog Debo that I had. He was a, you'd call UKC pit bull, Gotti line dog or whatever back in the day. This was like 2010 or something like that. Not that far back in the day, but a long time ago. And when I was trying to get him to understand that I wanted him to be aggressive, we lived in a bad neighborhood. So what I did was I actually we lived in these apartment buildings, and they were always remodeling apartments before the next person would move in, so there would be all this scrap carpet by the dumpster all the time. And I would pay $20 to a crackhead to wrap his arm 7-8 layers of old carpet and sick the dog on him.
Right.
And it worked. Once the dog knew, like, it was like a light bulb moment. Oh, this is what you want me to do? Yeah. Okay, strangers equal bite them. Okay, good, noted. And ever since then, he was just a good protection dog. He was very obedient still. I still had control over him. But if I said the magic word, he knew, lunge immediately, no hesitation. And he was a great animal. But like I said, but then when we're in a house and it's time to eat, I'll use the same method Cesar Millan did. I don't say a word. I just stand there and look at the dog with the bowl in my hand. Once the dog's ass hits the ground and I can see he's calm, then I put the food on the ground.